FBI's investigation into Judge Brett Kavanaugh continues as Senate Republicans push to have a vote on the Supreme Court nominee by the end of the week. We've got the latest on the probe, the politics, and more. Also, we're now just a little more than a month away from Election Day. We're going to look at some key races and new numbers and try to figure out where things stand on both the House and the Senate races. Then the man who set up the meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and the Russians during the campaign is now telling his story in a new book. My one-on-one conversation with Rob Goldstone is coming up. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman in for Richard French, and we begin tonight with a developing story that was just broken by the New York Times. Their headline, Trump engaged in suspect tax schemes as he reaped riches from his father. First line in the piece, President Trump participated in dubious tax schemes during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud that greatly increased the fortune he received from his parents. It goes on, quote, Mr. Trump received the equivalent today of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire, starting when he was a toddler and continuing to this day. Much of this money came to Mr. Trump because he helped his parents dodge taxes. He and his siblings set up a sham corporation to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents, records and interviews show. Records indicate that Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more. He also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. The article goes on to detail several more examples just like that, and it also explains how Trump's wealth and success were largely made possible because of his father. One of Trump's personal lawyers released a statement saying allegations of tax fraud or evasion are 100% false and also defamatory. Again, this story just broke in the Times. We will continue to follow the story, and we will keep you posted. Now to our other top story of this day, the ongoing confirmation battle over Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had this to say about it today.
Their goalposts keep shifting, but their goal hadn't moved an inch, not an inch. The goal's been the same all along. And so let me make it very clear. The time for endless delay and obstruction has come to a close. Judge Kavanaugh's nomination is out of committee. We're considering it here on the floor. And Mr. President, we'll be voting this week.
McConnell also saying the FBI report on Kavanaugh will not be released to the public. Only senators will see it. Meantime, the FBI is moving right along with its investigation.
President Trump says everywhere he goes, people are supportive of his pick for the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, despite the sexual assault accusations against him.
It's like a rallying cry for the Republicans. They are so in favor of Judge Kavanaugh.
And at a time when many are saying they stand with the accusers, President Trump expressed concern for the accused.
Well, I say that it's a very scary time for young men in America when you can be guilty of something that you may not be guilty of.
The FBI has concluded its interview with Mark Judge. The other person, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, claims was in the room with Brett Kavanaugh when she was allegedly sexually assaulted more than 30 years ago. That's a claim that both men deny. And there are others now coming forward with information. Carrie Burcham, who knew both Kavanaugh and his second-named accuser, Debbie Ramirez, at Yale. Here they all are at a wedding rehearsal in 1997. Burcham says Ramirez was trying to avoid him all night. But more troubling, in a series of text messages, Burcham alleges Kavanaugh and his friends tried to conceal and discredit Ramirez. Kavanaugh vehemently denies all of the sexual misconduct allegations. One key Republican senator hints that Kavanaugh's recent conduct may be another reason to vote no.
The interaction with the members was sharp and partisan, and that concerns me. And I tell myself, you give a little leeway because of what he's been through. But on the other hand, we can't have this on the court. We simply can't.
All right, so let's take this to our panel and find out what they're saying. Jericho Richardson is here tonight. She is a former spokesperson for Preet Bharara and Mayor Bill de Blasio. Next to her, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and all by his lonesome on the other side of the table, Richard St. Paul, Republican strategist, former vice chair for the National Black Republican Association. A lot to unpack from that, and I want to get to with all of you, but a vote on Friday? We don't have the FBI report yet. It's not done yet. I mean, maybe it's close to wrapping up, but voting on Friday?
It makes no sense. Clearly, it is trying to ram this through, and I think everyone deserves a transparent and clear process. And we need to make sure that the senators and the American people actually have clarity about what's going on.
Richard, why Friday?
Well, it's the end of the week, and it's time for a vote. The committee has already, the Judicial Committee has already
It is the end of the
nominated.
week, but it's time for a vote's an arbitrary thing. Why make Friday
It's
the
not
time for the
arbitrary
vote?
at all.
Yes,
Look,
it is.
Democrats have gotten everything that they wanted, right? They wanted a hearing. They wanted the women to, the accusers, the two women to testify about Kavanaugh. That happened. The Democrats also wanted an FBI investigation. That happened. So what are we complaining about?
I'll take this one. They wanted a thorough investigation to get to the bottom of all the claims and allegations. We already know that the White House had limited the investigation at first, so...
And since expanded it.
No, yes, I understand that, but why is the deadline Friday instead of whenever the report is finished?
Because the FBI does their job and they investigate. The FBI has, you haven't heard anybody from the FBI say this is not enough time. The FBI has a duty.
Okay, but how does Mitch McConnell know it's going to be ready by Friday?
Because the FBI is very good at what they do. Nobody from the FBI has said this is not enough time. They have a job to do, they'll get the job done.
Richard.
I'm not assuming anything.
You're assuming a lot. I don't think
Nobody from the FBI has come forward and said this isn't enough time.
And
the FBI has been charged with the duty.
Would they do that in your experience? Would the FBI come out and say we don't have enough time for the thing we've been assigned by the President of the United States to do?
Quite possibly. There's a lot that happened in this administration that we've never seen
When's
happen
the last
before.
time it happened?
Let's see, Comey? Wasn't he not the director of FBI? He said a lot of things.
Yeah, but he didn't say we don't have enough time to finish our investigation.
McCabe, the assistant director,
didn't say we don't have enough time to finish. I mean, I'm sorry to, you're making this point, but it's an arbitrary deadline. All right, we'll move on. Scary time for young men in this country? That's a quote from the president today?
I think, I will say this, I think and we shouldn't just say young men because the type of allegations that are alleged, it happens to men and women. I don't think we should say scary time for young men. I think this is actually an important conversation that this country needs to have. And there needs to be clarity on what consent is and what consent is not. Obviously, of issues like this and the way that this issue has been handled, it's clear that there's an underpinning of rape culture or not clarity on what's expected between young men and young women or any individual.
Just curious what your personal reaction was when you heard the president say that. In the midst of all this conversation about Dr. Ford.
I think you saw my personal reaction. I think, to me, it totally avoids the real issue and it's laughable.
Dom?
I think it's a complete smokescreen by the president. All you have to do is look at his history. When he's having a bad news day, he throws something out major for the American people to divert away from the topic. So today we have a major story breaking as it relates to his finances, which every New Yorker could have told you that in advance about Donald Trump. It may be new for the country, but every New Yorker knew that his finances were shaky at best. And as far as all of that argument of, oh, my dad only loaned me $1 million and I turned it into this fortune, kids that were not even born could tell you that's just Donald Trump talking. I just want to go back real quick to what you said about Mitch McConnell. That's posturing by the majority leader. That's all it is. It's wishful thinking on his part to make a vote come along on Friday. He doesn't need to convince the American people of a vote. He needs to sit down with the 3 senators that play and sit down with Senator Flake and say, hey, guy, I really need this vote to happen. And he can't deliver that. So all it is posturing, and he's trying to make it happen.
That's a terrific point. I want to go back to the overall in all of this because, Deborah Ramirez, who is the second accuser in all of this, her attorneys come out and said, hey, we spoke to the FBI, but they haven't followed up any of our information. They haven't called any of the people that we asked them to call. They haven't reached out to the other witnesses that our client Ramirez led them towards. All of that's contributed to this sense that this is not going to be as illuminating an investigation, or maybe even as fair an investigation as everybody would like. And you've got folks who are saying, hey, we're doing everything we can here. Democrats have gotten everything that they've wanted so far, and this is a fair investigation. Let's put aside the question as to whether it's fair or not. This is going to be a matter of feelings. People are going to have to feel like this process was fair, like they've looked under every stone. Otherwise, Kavanaugh or whomever winds up on the court is going to be an illegitimate justice in the eyes of many people. Do you think that factors in play here for the powers that be, for the people running the Senate? Do you think Mitch McConnell is thinking that way, long game?
No, I don't think I think what the Senate Majority Leader is thinking that, we have to, midterm elections are coming up, this Kavanaugh piece, we have to get to a vote on the Kavanaugh piece so that we can move on and support the people who are running for Congress
You
as
lead
Republicans.
me to a great question, because some Republicans are going to have to take a difficult vote on Kavanaugh if it winds up going down to the wire. And look at Murkowski, you can look at Collins, you can look at the Heller in Nevada, who is probably going to vote yes. There are going to be some difficult votes in here that could theoretically cost Republicans the Senate. Could. What would Republicans rather have? Control of the Senate or a seat on the Supreme Court? Because they might be mutually exclusive this go round.
Look, I think it's important to have. Well, they'd like to have both, right?
Which would you take? If you
control of the Senate, absolutely.
Control of the Senate as opposed to putting Kavanaugh on the court or putting another justice
absolutely,
on the court.
because you can still get somebody in the Supreme Court if you have control of the Senate. Advice and consent of the Senate.
So then why are they going to the mattresses on Kavanaugh as opposed to putting somebody else in who doesn't make the same tough choice?
Republican voters support Kavanaugh, and it's very important for Republicans who have control of all the houses in the presidency to get their nominee onto the court.
What do you guys think? You think the Republicans and McConnell are making a calculated decision here? We're going to get this guy on the court even if it costs us the Senate?
I think they're making a mistake. I mean, I totally agree with Richard. I don't think pushing this through, this shouldn't be the priority right now. The priority should be making sure you have the numbers and being able to vote, and you still will be able to, if that's the case, you'll still be able to put someone on the Supreme Court that you feel will share your values.
Dom, if the White House has to take Kavanaugh down and put somebody else up, does that really hurt Republicans running for re-election? Does that really hurt Republican senators? Because that's one of the arguments I've heard.
It may. The X factor in all this is how much of a vote is going to turn out that either is for or against the president. This is a situation where the Republicans made a mistake. They're sticking with Kavanaugh because they have no other choice. If they try to switch at this point, the clock is going to run out, and in 5 weeks, you may not be the majority party. And thus, if you're not the majority party, it's payback time for what you did to Obama with his nominee, Garland, and the Republicans are going to be in deep trouble. So they've got no other alternative, Andrew, but to stick with this guy. And by all indications, it doesn't look like he may make it, but it's not looking good for him at all.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to shift to a congressional race in the New York area. It should be a fascinating conversation and an interesting race. It's a swing district with a controversy about race in their race. We're going to look at what's going on in New York's Hudson Valley and also how this sort of thing, maybe not that unusual when you look across the country.